Up.
This conference will now be recorded.
There we go.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Marion, Cloud Communications Alliance. Thanks for joining us for this webinar. This is the second in the Cloud Communications Alliance webinars on artificial intelligence. The first one we did was about 30 days ago when we talked about AI models for the communications industry. And what here it is right here. I'll send you here's a link, so if you guys missed it, feel free to listen to the webinar. That was 30 days ago. Today's talk is going to talk a little bit about integration platform as a service. Just what we needed, another acronym, iPaaS. But in plain English, what it is a cloud-based platform that facilitates the integration of applications and data sources within an organization's IT environment. So picture this now. You take iPaaS and you layer AI on top of it, and what comes out the other side is an intelligent exchange of data across an organization's applications. The reason we're talking about this today at the Cloud Communications Alliance is because we believe that cloud communications providers are in a perfect position to offer iPaaS as a service. So with that, let me introduce, one last thing. We're going to be talking about AI at the Cloud Communications Alliance meeting in Copenhagen. I'll give you a link for that in a second. We're also going to be talking about AI, I believe, at the Cloud Communications Alliance meeting in New York City. I'll give you a link for that one as well. Both of those meetings are going to be after the summer. They're going to be in September. Look forward to seeing you there. And now, let me introduce our speakers for today. We have Andy Park, we have Steve Runyon from Team Central. Andy, Steve, take it away, please.
Joe, thank you so much. You did such a great job of explaining what we're going to talk about. Maybe we should just go to like question and answer session or something like that. That was perfect. It was perfect.
Right.
Hi, Andy Park. I am the Chief Growth Officer with Team Central. My background is engineering, process engineering, and then got into IT and management consulting at Accenture, and then more recently at Centric Consulting for about 20 years, primarily, improving processes, automating, implementing enterprise systems, integrating, things like that. And, about a year ago, I got a call to help to spin out a platform that Centric Consulting had built and take it to market. So that's my primary role now as the CGO at Team Central. Steve?
Yeah, and I'm Steve Runyon. I'm the VP of Sales for Team Central. My background is, we were talking before the call started, I've just been in the startup business since about 2007. Been through a couple IPOs, couple acquisitions, and this is a platform, and I think a market that is definitely catching heat. So I'm just glad to be here, and Joe and the CCA guys, thanks for setting this up for us to allow us to speak to the folks here today.
Great. Thanks, Steve. So we're going to talk a little bit about modern cloud iPaaS. Integration has been around for a while, and there are a number of different ways that it's been handled, system-to-system integration in over the past decade or plus. So, but there's some new types of new technology out, different ways to go about handling integration between systems and managing data. And now, when you bring in artificial intelligence into the equation, it offers some really unique opportunities to automate, improve the quality of data, make data more accessible. And so we'll talk a little bit about how these two work together, ideally in the future. So real quick about Team Central, I won't spend much time here. 6-year-old platform, an iPaaS, and we've implemented it at dozens of partners and customers, grown pretty rapidly over the last year since I joined, and we really focus on this idea that you can solve complex use cases with low code or no code types of solutions. And so our mission is to automate data management and govern data management across systems all with you know, a configurable interface versus having to you know, use JavaScript and .NET and traditional more point-to-point kind of integration methods. We're also now in the process with the emergence of ChatGPT and Bard and all these other AI models. We're really working towards integrating what we call co-pilots, which are AI-driven chatbots, if you will, and building those into our platform as well, because I think ultimately we're going to need to have a different interaction with, you know, with systems, and I think the chatbot capability is one that you know, seamlessly will, you know, works its way into this integrated kind of ecosystem. We are focused on telecommunications industry, I think managed services and telecom. And it's primarily because we've recognized there are a lot of systems out there. Well, there are a number of systems out there, and in fact, many of them are commonly used. Some of them are legacy and on-premise. They're not in the cloud yet, and there's a huge opportunity, I think, there to connect some of those systems, like BroadWorks, for example, into other systems and share data more seamlessly across those systems. So that's where we're making some big investments in this industry. So what are the topics we'll hit on here? And I'll try to get through this in about 25 minutes or so. I can also show you do a quick screenshot of our platform, just to give you a feel for what a no-code integration solution looks like. But first question I always ask is, you know, do we as and I ran a consulting firm as a partner. Is it better to invest in making more money or being operationally excellent? You know, and those decisions always compete for attention, right? Do I build out my sales team to try to offer more products, or do I work on process improvement and lean out the processes and operate more efficiently? If driving efficiencies always feels harder to do, honestly, and you know, it's an ongoing, constant process. Sometimes the real game changers feel more like revenue generation. But in an ideal world, in our world, I think the answer is both. So our purpose and the iPaaS purpose in the world, I believe, is to do more with less. Is to leverage existing infrastructure, existing technology wherever you can, so that you don't have to spend a lot of effort and money to modernize all your platforms. You know, you can really tap into some of those platforms that you have and get value out of those, a whole new round of value, because now you're talking to other systems. So that's a constant question that comes up. You know, do we invest in revenue or do we invest in operational efficiency? So what is the problem? You know, problem statement is that more and more systems are being used in the world, and I think the average is about 20 different SaaS applications are you know, sanctioned at different companies, and so the reason what that creates is this massive amount of data creation, this enterprise data creation, and that could be customer data, it could be vendor data, it could be, you know, master data, you know, order data, things like that. But the data is growing, and it compounds the problem when your system, you know, of having access to the data when your systems aren't talking. So that's driving this need for iPaaS, and you'll see some stats here in just a minute. But you know, the SaaS industry is going to grow, data is going to continue to grow, and that's going to continue to grow, increase the need for these iPaaS solutions in the market. The other thing I do want to mention is, you know, the premise here is that the systems don't talk to each other. There are integration solutions out there that vendors offer. What we find is a lot of those pre-built connectors, if you will, are designed around a particular use case or two. And so, I mean, me as a consulting firm partner, you know, I purchased a few of those to get our systems to talk to each other. And what we found is we spent more time trying to tweak those and get them to work and behave the way we wanted them to. it was really worth. And so taking a more of a platform approach, and there are a number of iPaaS out there. We're not the only one, but taking more of a platform approach that allows you to be creative in how you solve your use cases is important. The other part of the problem here is there are really insufficient technical resources that are skilled and experienced enough to build these integrations. The workforce is aging. The new people coming out of college, guess what? They are being trained right now in low, no code development. The number of people actively seeking out Java and .NET and Perl or whatever these other development technologies are is not where it's not going to be where it has been in the past. They're going to expect more of a citizen developer, easy to configure development platform, and that's really important to understand. I mentioned a couple of these things. The iPaaS is exploding because companies are fully embracing this need to digitally transform, and that might not be modernizing all your systems, but certainly adopting SaaS software and trying to plug it into your legacy systems, or upgrading some of the systems that historically have been in a server closet or at a hosted provider or something like that. So iPaaS is exploding as a result of that digital transformation. Research suggests that the amount of data that will exist and that needs to be managed properly is going to double, in a very short period of time between 2022 and 2025. Again, compounding the problem. We have more data, and we're not getting any more efficient at how we manage that, or govern it, or access it, or analyze it. We're just continuing to dig ourselves in a hole. So we need to find a solution for that. Steve, want to maybe mention a couple of the unique challenges we've been talking about here in this industry?
Sure. Just from my experience in the telco space, a lot of folks talk about the quote to cash or lead to cash workflow, right? And a lot of passing folders, manual intervention, the swivel chair phenomenon that's out there. To Andy's point earlier, like through automation, we can help eliminate that and to make you more operationally efficient. Things like, customer onboarding, mergers and acquisitions, that leads to a lot of siloed applications, right? And again, the more mergers and acquisitions that are out there, the more applications you're going to inherit as a business. One thing I recognized during COVID, and I think it was Capgemini wrote a report about this. Self-service became a huge challenge for a lot of the SPs. Just things like change your password, reset password. Support calls were through the roof, and a lot of the SPs weren't equipped to take on that much workflow and helping from a support perspective. But these are just some of the challenges we see that we're helping with in the telco space. Again, siloed applications, integration on the back end, trying to build out a front end portal from an e-commerce perspective, but then how do you tie in the billing, accounts payable, receivable applications? We talk about build versus buy from a development standpoint. And we have a calculator actually that'll show you, to build these connectors, we can do it in 3 to 5 weeks to integrate platforms. It might take you, longer to build them, but also maintain them. So off the shelf, we can help from an integration standpoint, just on the application layer.
Yeah, and I think the key, our goal here really is to leverage what you have, what companies have, and connect those and manage data seamlessly between those, so that from customer acquisition, customer onboarding, through to allocating telephone numbers, making the changes in the switch, billing, that whole end-to-end life cycle can be integrated and reduce the amount of manual manual effort it takes, and error, potentially error prone kind of processing, and streamline that. So that's what we're really trying to do here.
Yeah.
So why is this problem? This problem's been around for a while, and it's only now becoming like a hot potato because of the number of SaaS applications that are growing, and the size of the data that's being generated. So it's been around for a while. Why don't we have great answers to this problem? I mean, right now the part of the problem is it's just not economical to try to scale people to keep up with the problem. You can't add people fast enough to solve all the data needs and integration needs that are out there. Steve just mentioned the pandemic. Work processes do change, and sometimes those are impacted by your environment. They're impacted by your competition, but you need to have some flexibility in how you handle those kind of changes and respond to those. Custom integration. I've done so much custom integration, or at least estimated, managed projects that involve that. Always under budgeted, always fraught with bugginess. Always the high on the risk radar of any of these enterprise systems implementations. Custom integration is complex, and it's expensive, and it's high risk. And so if we can simplify that, make it less, better, faster, cheaper, then in our world, that's a great thing. You'll hear talk about APIs. These are points of entry for different systems where you can, pass data back and forth and get systems to talk. The problem is it still requires custom development to connect to those APIs, which means that the functionality is limited to whatever use case the API is designed for. And when things in that integration chain break, then your integration breaks. And so it's a brittle connection anytime you're doing that custom development. I'm not saying that there aren't reasons why it makes sense at times, but again, we're trying to create much more of a flexible platform-oriented approach. Workflow solutions, by the way, they're great solutions out there. Sometimes you might have heard of them, called BPM, business process management, or business process automation. Those are human-centric solutions, and they're good at what they do, but they assume that there's some kind of human intervention. We're not doing human intervention in automation here in iPaaS. We're doing data endpoint to data endpoint, system oriented automation. So they're complementary solutions, is my point, but they don't solve the data automation and governance problem we're trying to solve. RPA, robotic process automation, highly repetitive, simple transaction, type of automation solution. That's not going to solve complex use cases like we talked about with the customer onboarding and auto provisioning and invoicing and things, billing and things like that. What you end up with in more traditional models is a spaghetti Western, where you've got all these point-to-point integrations or API to API integration, and if one of those chains, those scripts or the integrations breaks, others can break, and then you have to track down where it broke, why, hey, where'd that developer go that we had that built that 10 years ago? It's a maintenance. It can become a maintenance problem, and and it's just difficult to manage. So we'll talk about how we solve that here in a minute. So our solution, I should say, the industry's solution is this low no-code approach that allow us to connect systems and manage data more efficiently. And you can do that without adding people. In fact, what you can do is you allow people to focus on the things that they need to do really well, and not have to do all this importing and exporting and manual manipulation of data. No, I fat fingered this, so somebody's going to yell at me because her report isn't right. that's what we're trying. That's what we're trying to solve. And you have to realize that when you're talking about BPM, RPA, workflow, APIs, you can't solve all of these automation problems with just one of those solutions. It requires a combination, right? So knowing when to apply RPA or BPM to a solution is just as important as knowing when to apply iPaaS, right? One solution doesn't solve all problems. Everything's not a nail. Many of the iPaaS solutions out there are called orchestrated or workflow in nature, and they're not event-driven. And there's a difference. Event-driven solutions like Central, our platform are more of a what's called a publish and subscribe kind of model, right? So an event happens in one place, certain data changes, our platform picks that up and applies business rules to it, transforms it, filters it, whatever, and then publishes that out to the rest of the system environment that would care about it. Any of those systems then that care about it then consume it and do what they need to it. It could be updating a customer's phone number, it could be updating a contact person, it could be updating the status of an open invoice. Those are the kind of things. The event-driven model allows you to create a very loosely coupled integration, which means something happens in the middle, everything's not going to break. You can identify what it is, you can make the change to the data discrepancy and actually reprocess that transaction. It's just a much more flexible kind of real-time development kind of model. A lot of iPaaS solutions out there are tools and they're not platforms. So we felt that it's important to bring an enterprise data structure with the platform so that you get what a definition of a customer should look like, and you get what it comes with the platform, right? You know what should be the attributes of a purchase order are, or a sales order, an invoice, or an opportunity. That's a value add accelerator that I think ours and maybe a couple others out there have. A lot of these iPaaS solutions are tools, and they expect that what best practices are and what field should be there for the customer and so forth. So there's some differences between the iPaaS that exist out there. Ultimately, all of us though in this iPaaS space are trying to create more builders with low and no code. And I'll show you a screenshot here in a minute. You can see how simplistic the interface is to build the integrations. So in our ideal world, you have this hub and spoke model where you've got your iPaaS in the middle, and each of these endpoints have connectors, right, that can talk to Central, and Central in turn can talk to any of these other systems. So any combination of systems can be loosely connected through Central and can talk to each other, and that could be they could be pushing information, they could be consuming information, they could be doing both. It could be bi-directional, and it's all very near real time. It is not a it's not a batch scheduled process like some of the other solutions historically have been, where you run what's called an ETL process. You're extracting data, you're putting it in a table, something some script or code does something with the data, and then you've got something else that has to pick that up and load it into a system. This is actually going directly from endpoint to potentially multiple other endpoints near real time. Here's actually a screenshot of our development platform. It's literally drag and drop. You can pick the connectors that you want. You can drop them onto your canvas, and then you essentially literally just configure the rules for how you want data to pass between the different endpoints. On the left over there, you can see we've got versioning control. At the top, build, test, deploy, and monitor. There's a full SDLC for those of you familiar with software development. That's software development lifecycle. that's actually built into our platform, and we believe that we're the first one to release a full SDLC in no code on the market.
Hey, Andy, maybe we want to pause on the last two slides. It's
Yeah.
maybe pause and see if there are any questions or comments. Anyone have anything, maybe you're already working with some of the stuff. Maybe you need to understand a little bit better. Any questions out there?
I have a question on your prior slide showed ServiceNow, right, as an option for integration there. I know some of the providers use ServiceNow for kind of their back office and onboarding processes. Does the integration options allow, or is there a way it helps you with ServiceNow integrating to kind of your Cisco platform or your communications platforms with your kind of back office CRM like that? In a kind of solution scenario that would maybe be really close to what some of these guys are doing?
Yeah, exactly. So ServiceNow would be a great example. I think Salesforce is another, that a number of organizations use. We would bring the ServiceNow kind of pre-built connector, and if we wanted to connect with Cisco WebEx, for example, or Zoom, or one of these other solutions, we would, if we don't have the connector built, we do for Teams, we need to build it for WebEx, but it's usually about a 3 to 6 week effort to build a new connector and understand that integration between ServiceNow and the WebEx up. Yeah. Versus months and months, and using traditional coding methods.
Right. So you can create that solution just as kind of a custom solution you would build for them to make that work, right?
Yeah, that's the idea, and if we can do it in a way that's I think financially good for everyone, and we then add that connector to our portfolio, and can, it just expands the portfolio of these connectors that we can go to market with.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other? Okay.
Hey, I got one more. Sorry. Are you?
So using that's the scenario of maybe adding WebEx. Let's say if I want to add WebEx and it's not one of your current connectors, do you guys do that as like a separate charge, or is that how does that work?
We are extremely interested in building an industry vertical offering with Central, and so we know there are a couple solutions like WebEx that just have to be on our roadmap. And so what I would offer up is that we typically would do a proof of concept to make sure that everybody's happy with how it works, and we'd do that either on our dime or at a really low cost, right? Because we want the connector, right? Because everybody else wants to have that WebEx connector as well. That just grows our product.
Yeah, it's from a feature request perspective, it's a popularity contest, right? Like WebEx, Teams, Salesforce, HubSpot. Then you have different OSS, BSS, and billing systems. So that's what we're kind of sizing up right now, Joe, and Clark, just trying to understand which ones those are, because we had a conversation about this earlier this week about if we do too many customizations on the connector front, our business doesn't scale well, right? And that's not the most sustainable. But what we want to be focused is, well, quality first. After we figure out the top, again, most popular applications, platforms that we need to build the integration platform for.
We've heard certainly we have Teams, we've heard WebEx, Zoom, 8x8, and a couple others. Those are all solutions that we'll need to build in order to service this industry.
Yeah.
Can you once you build it, can everybody use the same code, or let's say it's just something like Cisco BroadSoft interacting with Zoom in a smarter way? I mean, is that something then that you kind of productize and they all use it, or is it specific to each company's setup?
It is templatized and so that it's packaged up as each of those systems you mentioned would be packaged up as a separate connector, and it would be added to the portfolio of connectors that are in our platform, and then it's the configuration of it, however, would be specific to you. If we were to take those connectors and take it to a different company, they're not going to have your configuration. They're just going to have the structure of the data and the configuration that tells it how to access the data point. So it's going to be a generic template that's 80% of the way there, and it just needs to be configured.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the applications are all the same. Just the use is different, and unique to each company.
Yeah, got it. Thanks.
I'll take this real quick, Steve.
Yeah. So this is, I might recognize some of you guys might recognize me from when I was at Parkbench about a year ago. We had a platform called Odin that was built for BroadWorks automation, right? Management, portal provisioning, that sort of thing. We had a lot of companies that came to me or us and said, can you build me sort of an e-commerce front end portal and then tie in the applications on the back end? We just didn't have the bandwidth to do that. So here, though, we actually can. This is what the front end portal would look like from an e-commerce perspective. And then all the appropriate applications on the back end, we can tie those in. This helps automate selling, obviously, especially for the smaller shops. If there's 5 to 10 employee companies, just go on your site, pick a plan that works for them, sort of a gold, silver, bronze approach. How many phones they need, conference phones, that sort of thing, auto attendant, just the various sort of needs. But this is something that we can build for our clients that I think that can add value and again help scale your sales organization from a more modern approach.
As we're working on places where we can get started, where we see that they're repetitively similar gaps in solutions, and so we thought this might be one that, hey, if we could create this shopping cart experience, and whatever plan you select, it drops the order information through Central, through the integration, it drops the plan information into HubSpot or CRM, Salesforce or whatever you happen to be using. And at least that takes one step out of one phone call, out of the process. From there, now you've got maybe the quote, maybe it's even approved as an order. You can take that then and connect it with auto provisioning, right? So it's a kind of an iterative build process that we've been talking to companies about, and we're really close from kicking off our first proof of concept here, in specific to this industry.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, I confess I got here really late, so I've been keeping quiet and trying to catch up. But are you saying that you can build the e-commerce front-end portal for a customer and then run it through to a full provisioning and delivery experience at the other end?
That's what we're in the process of building right now, and it's a matter of finding the right couple partners to work with us, right, and help us understand the unique business requirements to do that. That's right.
Yeah. So if you join late, I sort of touched on that quote to cash workflow, the whole swivel chain phenomenon, and automating that as best we can. I think it's to Andy's point, identifying the right partner to help kind of build it out, then tying in the platforms on the back end for device management, button management, provisioning the phones right. That whole process, the quote to cash workflow. So, but that's definitely what we're striving to achieve.
People are still provisioning phones.
From my point of view, I think that there's quite a bit of capability in automating the creation of customer and the dispatch of hardware. It's creating the slick front end that actually brings in the original instruction that is
Yep.
missing for a lot of people who need to get the SMB marketplace done cheaper in terms of cost to sell, cost to manage.
Yeah. Yep. You're spot on. Alan, I think you had a question or a comment.
No, it was a joke. I said people are still provisioning phones.
You'd be surprised. Yeah.
It was a bad joke. It was a dad joke.
Yeah.
Alan, they are, but they're the ones that fit in your pocket and you take them around with you.
Yeah, right.
That's right.
All right. Okay. I had to put this cool picture of this robot up there because that's not at all what we're talking about, but it looks like artificial intelligence. You know, I was, it was either that or it was, you know, the Terminator or something. But so really, when people think about artificial intelligence, we've been kind of trained to think of this, you know, human, this robotic evolution of human, you know, human traits and humanity. And I mean, that's part of it. But what we're talking about here today with artificial intelligence is really more about the processing power, you know, that now exists in these learning models that now exist that that can make much quicker work of very complex problems. And that's maybe you know, somewhere in this robot, but you know, in the brain or whatever. But you know, we're trying to find ways to interface easier, make quick work of complex problems, you know, improve the quality of the output and make it more predictable, and as well as develop new products. There was an article that I read, and I want to caveat here. I'll make a note of it, but I'll come back to the word gimmicky. You know, there's an article I read recently that I think this company ran a number of requirements, health-related requirements for protein synthesis through ChatGPT or one of these models, and it was able to generate like 15 different new proteins that were viable solutions to the medical problem that humanity never even knew existed, right? So that's pretty cool stuff. I think that's maybe a unique example of where there's actual business value in, you know, in where AI is right now. In my mind, I'm more of a functional guy, you know, process person, a bit more of a business person, and most of what I'm seeing out there is really cool stuff. It's like science fiction kind of stuff, but it's gimmicky, you know. It's a shiny new object with a lot of potential. And so what we want to do is we want to, you know, capitalize on the evolution of this AI and merge it with enterprise data, right? Real business data, and solve real business problems. And that capability is not fully there yet. And so we want to be on the forefront of that. And that's where our co-pilots, these AI driven co-pilots, these virtual assistants, if you will, you know, through Slack or Teams or whatever, you can talk into a mobile device, and it will go out and answer questions that you would not normally have been able to answer without a lot of research. So, you know, AI does help automate repetitive tasks and maintain quality of those. This concept of democratization of intelligence, what it's doing is it's essentially allowing everyone to have access to the same you know, intelligence, the same information. You just have to know how to ask you know, the system, the AI interface, you know, what you want. And there are also there are negative things associated with AI. You know, people might have heard of the term hallucinations. You know, you have to kind of know what to ask these models that are out there right now in order to get a response that is not only valid or not only sounds valid, but is valid, right? Because the responses can seem really real and really valid, and they might not really be valid based on how you've asked the question. So it's, they're still working through that, and then there's a whole world around what's called tuning of the learning models and all that kind of stuff. But we won't get too much into that here. So
Andy, I would think that if I may,
yeah.
a couple things, because I've been immersing myself in all things AI. So I'm not claiming to be an expert, but I did build a platform in the space that did all that seamless integration. We didn't do the e-commerce thing because the market, the channel at the time didn't seem to want it, but I think they probably should or would now. I think AI is, by the way, they have fact checking. There's all kinds of plugins now for like ChatGPT, and Bard actually does references to the facts that they present. So I think all that, like, if that stuff's being updated daily, weekly. So like the things you just said, like several weeks down the road will be wrong, right? Right.
Yeah.
But I think you guys could benefit from using AI to help create the efficiencies within your app, even so that's number one. Number two is I think you're going to want to consider some method of dealing with privacy, because I think especially in the communication space, they're not going to want to use these just open large language models. So there are, you probably know this, but you're going to want to have a solution there where you're using an open source AI and maybe not the Bards and the ChatGPTs, because you give them their stuff and they're learning on your stuff, and they're not making claims that they're not using it. They are using it. So anyway, I think in your space, or in this space, AI has a lot of meaningful impacts actually today, not tomorrow, today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Alan, along your same lines there, I mean, AI, I mean, people writing code with AI at a much faster speed, right, is essentially writing the code for you. So, I mean, it may not be perfect, may not build the exact integration you're trying to build, but it seems like it would expedite the abilities to write integrated code, right, to tie platforms together.
Well, it's interesting. So a couple of things you just mentioned there. One, in our AI architecture, there are, to your point, privacy is an important piece of this. You don't want businesses to share their information with Google and these guys, right? There are companies now that are, I think, specializing in privacy solutions that either encode or protect that enterprise data when it is shared on Google. Google can't consume it. I don't know how they do it, but so I know that that's something we need to solve. I think that's a good point. The other point there, I'm sorry, what was the second point there? Privacy was one, and then generative.
I think the automation of so I mean, obviously your whole model is low code, no code, but I think there's lots of things people can still with no code mess things up, create loops, do things, whatever. But you can use artificial intelligence in your apps to help people be more efficient, more effective, even offer solutions as they're in there. So I think the integration of AI within your software for the benefit of the user to make their use of your technologies better, faster, more delightful. I mean, that's an absolute todayism. Like you should be doing that today.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm glad you said that. You walked through that again. Our end state is to be able to interact with Central and have it build applications, build systems, build the integrations. And even move past this whole idea of configuration or light scripting of things. So that's absolutely where we know we need to go, and I think that's where our investors are expecting us to go with the platform. And so yeah, so
I'll go just a bit further, if it's okay, because
Sure.
I'm a bit of I'm not to geek out on it, but
I love it.
let's say a user gets to your interface, right? And where they might normally click or move or drag or whatever, imagine if they could get what they expect, whatever they normally already know from you, but where they could just, it could say, hey, looks like you might be trying to do this, so let me just go for it. Like you're trying to set Clark up as a user, he's an admin, but like, let me just do it for you, right? So you just layer that thing on top. I think Steve, you're on mute. I don't know if you're trying to talk, but yeah, it's the things that are possible like I really believe people should stop talking about it as a futurism. It's like it's not perfect, but but it's moving so fast. If you keep talking like it's a futurism, you'll miss it, right? You got to work with it now, learn with it now, and tune it. And anyway, that's my 2 cents.
I was just saying, Alan, predictive, right? You want to make it predictive. So it's, that's the ultimate intelligence, right? Your predictability, and they can figure things out
Well,
without you having to ask it to do it.
I love the
Yeah, like you
idea
could
of
tell
it.
a couple things. You could say like, like I said, set Clark up as an admin, set Joe up as a user, do
Yeah.
this, do that, and then like let it go figure out the fields it needs to populate, the information. It already knows Clark. Like point it to, it can find Clark on LinkedIn, whatever, and like
Yeah.
boom, 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 it's done, and it's that makes it more delightful.
Yeah. I want to I'll circle back on that just in a minute here. I won't cover this much, but just for people that maybe, it sounds like obviously you guys have had some exposure to AI or even pretty deep in it. I just included this for people that want to know how you can interact or how you can produce things from AI. So there's a whole variety of things. Most of the interaction right now from an input standpoint is text, but you've probably more recently heard that there's Twitter posts that have public politicians and public figures and musicians and things like that that are releasing music that doesn't really exist, right? So there's a whole, there's a, I think the world is AI's oyster here at some point, in some ways, and like Alan just mentioned, this is a today thing in my mind, though. Really getting to the enterprise data level, it might be today, but I think it's gonna mature very quickly. But I think it's still not where I can see how I can apply it, easily. And so that's what we're trying to work through. I think, and I just mentioned a couple. I'll include this in the deck, but there's a couple different models out there that you've probably heard about. The Bard, I think Alan mentioned earlier, GPT-4. There's a couple others that are more image video related, like Stable Fusion and Runway ML and some things like that.
Yeah, there's a couple are Discord, and then Dolly OpenAI is a really good one. But and just on your thing on images, AI art's phenomenal. Right now you can just like your picture of the robot. With
Yeah.
2 sentences, you could have created a custom AI art thing that's doing whatever. It's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah. Hey, we did have one question from Jay Kahn.
Yes.
That says, what is the minimum number of seats for this application? So when you say minimum number of seats, I'm curious as to what you mean by that.
He's talking about like user-based pricing. It's actually platform-based pricing. So
Okay. Yeah, connect.
Yeah, so you get the platform and 2 connectors, which essentially allows you to have 2 systems talking to each other, and there's an annual cost to that. And then you can add additional connectors as you extend it out to new systems. Then there's kind of a per connector cost. There's no consumption. We looked at consumption-based modeling, and we're kind of more of a hybrid consumption-based modeling, pricing. But we're not doing user-based or consumption-based. So if you have 5 systems you want to talk to each other, you've got the platform plus 3 additional connectors. We don't break it down. Some of the competition breaks it down by module and transaction set and all this stuff. But what happens is they're really happy with the product, and then as it continues to roll out and grow, the costs just start ramping up, right? Because you're now the number of transactions that kind of multiplies across the the ecosystem. So pretty straightforward pricing kind of model.
But I did ask you guys not to make this a sales pitch, but I'm going to kind of throw you a softball if you want it. Do you want to talk at all about pricing real quickly? Again, normally I don't, but maybe this is a little bit different right now.
I can tell you what our typical pricing is. Actually, Steve's the sales guy. I'll let him do it.
It's all free. It's all free. I think so. these conversations always intrigue me from a pricing perspective. Um, so again, we price it per connector, right? It's not the number of transactions and modules. When you get into that sort of pricing model, the cost can be astronomical. What we want to make sure it is it's predictable every year, right? So um, cost per connectors, on the onset, about 10 grand per connector per year. But then as you buy additional connectors, that price is discounted fairly heavily. And at the same time, we want to talk to you about the strategy long term, rather than go, hey, here's two connectors, connect your ERP and CRM, because that's usually where we start. Um, as we start to scale, and then we are having conversations now with customers in the telco space, hey, we might need a dozen connectors. Okay, well, let's talk about that strategy and how we incorporate that into the cost model and
Kind of volume pricing. You can get
yeah.
return on yours.
So we'll do bundles and some volume-based pricing, like Andy said, and try to get creative to make sure we're not breaking the bank. But now at the same time, um, we have to be a sustainable company from a revenue perspective. So I'll challenge you on cost. I'll challenge you. Look, well, if you build it yourself, here's what I think it's going to cost you, and I'll build a TCO out and show you. And that helps me in a competitive way, but also I'm not always talking to the CFO, and maybe the prospect is. So
What are the most common? Did you say the most common applications people start with? You said ERP. Did you say in customer contact?
Yeah, and CRM. That's typical. I mean, Andy, would you want to expand on that? But I think that's
Well, I think if you have a financial system or billing system and a and a CRM solution, those typically need to talk to each other. You're going to have your customer information in there, your customer account information, your invoicing, so a lot of times that's an interesting conversation. But other companies we're talking to, they want to automate management of their telephone numbers, right?
yeah.
Or they want to auto
Yeah.
provision.
Yeah.
We only have about 5 more minutes. Real quick, Alan was asking you, from buy to implement, approximately what kind of time frame? And I realized, it probably varies on the how complex the application is, but a ballpark. And we'll put this in the contract.
Yeah, I think 3 to 5 weeks. I mean, it's going to depend, but 3 to 5 weeks is a short answer.
What did you say, Steve? 3 to 5?
Yeah, 3 to 5 weeks in short answer. But it depends on customizations, that sort of thing.
If we don't have a connector already built, it's usually in a 5 to 6 week time frame, because we'll have to build that connector. But normally we have one of the connectors. We either have HubSpot, or we've got Salesforce or Dynamics CRM or whatever. And so normally one of the sides of the equation is already pre-built, and that's a matter of literally minutes to stand it up and maybe a few hours to configure it. But on the other side, we're going to build a connector, and that requires some testing and things like that. So I think that's probably a reasonable time frame. If to Steve's point earlier, if you look at the effort and the time frame it would take to build that with custom development or API development, it's months.
Yeah.
I noticed Steve in sales said 5 weeks, and Andy in operations said 6 weeks. Just so you noticed that.
I'm just trying to accelerate revenue, Joe.
I noticed that. That was intentional.
Just trying to accelerate the revenue.
So I mentioned co-pilots. This is the future for us, and we're actually building this right now. It's interesting, and we were talking earlier about privacy and some of these other considerations. We actually have an AI roadmap and architecture for how we're building this co-pilot concept. And I'll go right on to this, which is, one use case, and we've got a number of use cases for telecommunications, but it's sales financials, right? And it's KPIs. If I could ask the system, these questions about my performance, and maybe even farther than that, not only ask about performance against key metrics, but ask them how I address that. What levers do I have to change, my impact my churn rate or my renewal business rate? Hey, because you're only sending one marketing campaign out every 6 months. I mean, having visibility into all these different systems, we're going to we would tell the company what the prerequisite connectors you need in order to have the right information for these KPIs. But this is probably the first place we're going is this KPI driven chatbot, Copilot.
We have about 2 minutes ago, just to give everybody a heads up.
Yeah, I'll just stop there. We'll send the deck out so everybody can take a look at it. I think you guys get the concept that our integration stuff kind of underpins this generative AI we've been talking about. So I won't hit that. Any other kind of final questions?
There was a question from Jay Kahn for a solution for that small company with 5 applications start at. I guess you're talking about a cost perspective.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what you're saying.
Yeah, so we can take it offline because it's probably going to depend. If you want to, I did drop Andy and my email in chat. So if there are any other questions that we don't get to, please email us and we'll try to set up a quick call or respond via email. That helps.
And we'll be sharing this recording with everybody who signed on, who appeared today, and everybody who signed up for today, as well as a copy of the deck. So we'll share that with everybody, along with Andy and Steve's contact information. This is great. I'll tell you, as I'm sitting back today, it reminded me of the old days of Cloud Communications Alliance when a dozen of us would get in a room and talk about what is this cloud communications stuff all about?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what this was today. I think you're giving us a little bit of a, with all due respect to what Alan Rim said, a little bit of a glimpse of the future. I mean, maybe the immediate, maybe next month future, but I think it's where this is all headed. So thank you for educating us today and exciting me, for the possibilities.
Awesome. Any other questions before we wrap up? I know we're at time.
Anybody else? All right, we're going to continue the AI conversation in Copenhagen in September and in New York in September. So
awesome.
This dialogue on AI and communications will continue at Cloud Communications Alliance. Thank you all for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
See you guys.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Team Central.
Have a great day.